About 2 hours drive from our home in Gulf Shores, Alabama, is the Choctawatchee River. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. It's in Florida, and there's a lot of magic to it. There are two large springs located off the Choctawatchee. One is Morrison Springs, and the other is Washington Springs. Morrison Springs being the longest run of the two. We decided to put up the river, and as usual, go to the farthest point first. So there we go, rolling down to Choctawatchee and heading for Morrison Springs. It's about a 30-mile run, and we're making good time due to the pure speed of our run. From here, we're going to speed the film up to give you the highlights of the run down the river. If you notice how dark brown the waters are on this river, there's a good reason for it. After talking to some locals, it's not always this way. But for 4 or 5 days before we went, we'd had continuous torrential downpours, totaling 6 to 8 inches in the area, and the river was really flowing. Even though you can't tell obviously by the sped up video, I would say that the speed of the river flow was 5 to 7 miles an hour, and it was at least 8 foot above its norm. We got this information from the local state game warden from the Florida Department of Wildlife. He was an interesting guy, and when he took one look at our skis and went, I don't know what you guys are doing out here with all the logs flowing down, but hopefully you don't manage to kill yourselves. Well, I kind of agree with him on that one. It did get a little freaky with some of the big lumber floating, but what the hell, you only live once. They may call this place the Choctawatchee River, but in a lot of spots it looks a whole lot more like the Choctawatchee Stream. Even the Choctawatchee Puddle in some spots. There's a list of obstacles to go through, from tree stumps to fallen trees, huge branches, shallows, all compounded by the fact that this water was really cloudy from the rains. Not for the weak at heart. So there we were, rolling down the river. Things were going smoothly, ducking and dodging some branches, cutting around, finding the deepest part of the channel, avoiding crashing, all the good stuff. Beautiful day, perfect weather. What could possibly go wrong? We'll be at Morrison Springs in no time. In no time. Wait a minute. Uh-oh. What do we see ahead? That's right. This is the point on the river when we just flat out got stumped. Well, if at first you don't succeed, try and go around it. So I tried to creep around the outside and push my way through. That was the point when you can't see it on film, but the log from the lower side of the tree blocks the river completely. Dead blocked and out of luck. After carefully examining the situation, we decided on a tactical retreat. It's time to head back down to the river. I don't know how good we are on fuel at this point, but I started to consider the fact that Washington Springs might be a better option. So never give up, never surrender. On to the next springs. Morrison will have to figure out a different route another time. My father-in-law, Duke, was a funny guy. He'd often give sage advice or just some tongue-in-cheek humor. And he always said, when you come to the fork in the road, take it. Well, that wasn't going to work for us. But I'm looking to the right, and I figure, according to the GPS, that this is Holmes Creek. And Holmes Creek is a route we're going to take to Washington Springs. It doesn't look like a creek. Looks kind of thick and heavy. And I was a little dubious after going down the main body of the river and finding how small that got. But in for a penny, in for a pound, we're going to put the handle on the throttle, and let's head for Washington Springs and hope for the best. What was that Duke saying? Oh yeah, when you see a fork in the road, take it. At this point in the game, I was really starting to wonder if we were going to make it to the springs at all. And then, as if by magic, I looked down at the water, and all of a sudden, pieces of green and clear water started to show through. At first, I thought it was a trick of the eyes, but as I went further along, as you can see, it started getting bluer and bluer and bluer. Was this the magic of Washington Springs finally occurring? Oh yes, oh yeah, this has got to be the place. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the whole world, but when the water turns clear blue after brown all day long, you got to figure it's the source outside of the rainwater. Tina got that one right. Incredibly beautiful water. Clear and crystalline, just like you'd imagine spring water to be. And here, just right next to a muddy river, and it stands alone. If you look at the beauty of the trees around us, between cypress and oaks, some of these cypress that dig down to the bottom could be up to 500 years old. Really a mind-blowing place to see. Although the video is very pretty, you gotta be there. You'll never do it justice with a camera. Although this footage is being sped up considerably, about 300%, you can see as you wind through this area, it just gets better and better. But still, I wanted to see the actual Washington Springs. I'd seen pictures of it where everybody hung out with their boats, so I figured it's gotta be up here ahead. So we're just gonna keep riding and riding until we find it. Because at this point, we gotta see something. I know that sounds a little greedy, but I always want more. And there it is, up ahead, the beautiful Washington Springs and the beach area where I've seen photographs of people hanging out and having a great time and swimming. All the wandering was worth it as we rolled through the water, which got even clearer. I mean, look at the sand below us and the trees and the stumps from reflections. What an incredible view. And yep, there it is. The hangout spot right at the end of the trail, just like the pictures we'd seen, but a whole lot more beautiful. While at our original destination, Morrison Springs, there's a large camp and it's kind of touristy. But the nifty thing about Washington Springs is it's accessible only by boat. And you'll see just about every kind of boat imaginable back there. We got to chatting with these guys, and they were some really cool people. They were local guys that worked at a tire plant up in Alabama and were down here enjoying the beauty of the springs. Look at the specialized equipment they use with the extra long prop shafts on their propellers. That's to get through these extremely skinny waters. A very cool place, and it's time for a good long hang and meet some new friends. And what a hang it was. We had a lovely time, swimming in the cool water, checking out the trees, the underwater stumps. And Tina swam out to the middle to check out the source of the springs. You can really see the water bubbling up here as it just keeps filling the area with cool, clear water. Well, I tell you what, this place has definitely lived up to its reputation so far, and it's really been worth the ride. I'm glad we came out here. I'm just a little disappointed we didn't see Morrison too, but seeing this in all of its natural wonder, I don't think that really Morrison was necessary on this day. Too much fun was already had. Just when we thought we'd seen everything, we ran into a couple named Greg and Lynn. They were out for the day on their boat. Greg had grown up here locally in Washington Springs area and knew the place like the back of his hand. There's nothing like local knowledge to really get to know a place. So while we were chatting, he started telling us about a little old place that's rarely visited called Papa's Creek. Now, I don't know if this was his name for it or the name everybody else knew it by too, but I'm willing to call it Papa's Creek if Greg is. So they were nice enough to give us an escort, which is really good because it can get very confusing wandering through cypress trails through the springs. After a while, it all starts to look the same. And we ran through a huge lake on the way through that we didn't even know was there. Absolutely incredible views were had, and we just really couldn't believe our good luck on meeting such nice people. They threaded us through the trees and lakes and streams and everything else there was to see until we finally got close to Papa's Creek. And again, I'm glad we were following them. As you can see, there's a lot of stumps out on the water in this area, and the trail to Papa's Creek was full of them. But we did the smart thing. We followed single file, and I stepped my nose of my ski right on the prop wash of Greg's boat. I figured if his outboard could get through, so could my wave runner. By this point in the trip, we were way off the GPS map. All you could see was some green areas in topo, but no such luck of seeing any kind of trail. But thanks to Greg and Lynn, we were able to chase them through this wild little trail. Again, you're seeing these cypress trees up to 500 years old as we thread through more cool, clean water. This place is absolutely incredible with a treat on every corner. From turtles swimming around to birds and just more roots than you've ever seen. It's absolutely incredible. I know I use that word a lot, and it deserves it here. After chasing Greg and Lynn for what seemed like miles, and it probably was, everything kind of slowed down a little bit. The path got narrow, the stumps got epic, and I really wondered what was going to be on the other end. Just for a moment, it crossed my mind, wouldn't it be a bummer if Greg and Lynn just wanted to get rid of some tourists and hide them in the backwoods? This would be a perfect place. But of course, Greg and Lynn weren't those kind of people. It's just the little things that cross your mind when you're out in the boonies, miles from civilization, wandering through springs with strangers. Call me paranoid, but I can be sometimes. Okay, so at this point, I was going, where the hell are we going? But look at the water. I'm just obsessed with it. It's so clean and perfect. So I'm going to keep following and following and following. And all of a sudden, a clearing opened up. And again, a surprise. Here we were. We were pulling up at the end of Papa's Creek and officially landing at Papa's Springs. I gotta tell you, this area is unbelievable, incredible, mind-blowing. Look at the cool, clear water at this spot. Another deep water spring. And a quick hang with some really good people. And one really big log laid down in the water. I'm going to just shut up and let you look. After hanging out with Greg and Lynn for about 15 minutes, we were treated to such a show with such gracious hosts. But now it's time to leave. Greg and Lynn were going to hang out for a while, so we decided to strike out on our own and see if we could find our way back through the maze of cypress trees. At this point, the GPS batteries were getting low to none, and I wanted to save them, so I kept it turned off and decided to go on dead reckoning. That was a mistake, but it still gives you a chance to see the water with no wake disturbing it. It just doesn't look real. Okay, at this point, I'm going to have to admit what most men never will. Yep, I managed to get ours lost. Oh, sure, it's pretty. But after a while, it really all does look the same. Beautiful, but absolutely no sense of direction in this mess. So I figured, what the hell? I'll just kind of cruise and try and find a way through. That didn't work out really well. At that point off in the distance, I heard an outboard, and I was hoping like hell that it was Greg and Lynn to dig me out of this mess. Yes, it was Greg and Lynn. They figured we'd probably get ourselves lost, and they were nice enough to come along and check the trail. Thanks, guys. So they gave us a rapid escort escape, and it was absolutely awesome. And again, he spotted every stump for me. Watch me carefully thread through his outboard wake. Yep, goodbye, you guys. It was really fun. We'll see you next time we come down. And thanks again for the tour of Papa's Creek, as well as a little great hang time in Papa's Springs. At this point in the stream, it got pretty narrow. And here comes a great big party barge that we let on by. And then we kick it hightail again. We're going to put a little boogie to it so we can get ourselves back to the boat ramp. And we were getting a little bit tired at this point. It was 85 to 90 degrees all day. And in Florida, that's getting pretty warm. But it's hard to resist this place, and it was even harder to leave. We watched the water change back to a dirty mud. We kissed the springs goodbye and decided to head on home. Little did we know that right at the end of the day, the river had saved one more surprise for us. Right off the front of the jet ski, if you look off in the distance, right at about 11 o'clock, you'll see a massive fish breach out of the water. These fish were at least 6 feet long, and they must have weighed at least 100 pounds. Even from 200-300 yards away, you can see the massive splash that this critter lays down in front of our skis. We'd seen him when we departed from the ramp, and then we saw him pretty much all day along the river. Well, back to hyperdrive and back to the bridge. It's time to pull the skis in and head on back home. But we vowed to come back and get to Morrison Springs the next time. We'll film that adventure. Hopefully you'll be able to join us.